The night was cold. Rain fell gently on the dark streets of Varel 9, a city where aliens from 100 worlds walked every day. Lights flickered. Neon signs buzzed. But in one quiet corner, near a broken vending stall, something small was curled, up on the wet sidewalk. Her name was Zira. She sat there hugging her knees. Her skin, light blue and marked with faded scars, shivered with each drop of rain. Her dress was torn, dirty, and barely covered her thin frame. Her long silver hair stuck to her face. People passed by. No one stopped. No one cared. "Ugly thing," whispered a market woman, shaking her head. "Disgusting reject," spat a tall alien guard, stepping over her like she was trash. Zira didn't answer. She was used to it. This had been her life for the last 3 days. 3 days since they threw her out. She had once worked in House Drexel, a rich alien family. She cleaned floors, served food, never spoke unless told. But one day the lady of the house shouted, "She's defective. Her face is not pleasing. Throw her out." And so they did. A truck dumped her near the market. The guards didn't ask questions. To them she was just a thing, something broken, something unwanted. Now the cold sidewalk was her bed. Her stomach growled. She hadn't eaten since a kind child gave her half an old fruit. That had been yesterday. The child's mother dragged the boy away, yelling, "Don't touch it, it's dirty." Zira didn't cry anymore. She had no more tears left. Suddenly a group of teens walked by, laughing. "Look at that," one said. "Still alive?" "She smells like death," said another, wrinkling his nose. One of them threw a half-empty drink at her. The bottle hit her shoulder and spilled sticky juice over her already wet dress. Zira flinched but didn't speak. They left, laughing loudly. And then silence again. Only the soft sound of rain and her slow breathing remained. Minutes passed. Or maybe hours. She didn't know anymore. Then, footsteps. Different this time. Heavier. Slower. A figure stopped in front of her. She looked up, expecting more pain. But what she saw made her freeze. It was a human man, tall, wearing a brown coat. His face looked tired but kind. His eyes weren't cold like the others. They held something strange. Concern. "Hey," he said softly. Zira looked down. She didn't want to see his pity. He crouched beside her. "Are you okay?" She didn't answer. He looked at her arms, bruises, cuts, old wounds. He took off his coat and placed it gently over her shoulders. She grabbed it tightly, scared he might take it back. But he didn't. "My name is Eli," he said. "I'm a mechanic. From Earth. I live nearby." Zira slowly turned her head. No one had spoken to her like that in days. Not since she was thrown away. Eli stood up and offered her his hand. "Come on. You can't stay out here. It's freezing." Zira didn't move. "Please," he said. She stared at his hand for a long time. Her mind screamed, "Don't trust him. He'll hurt you too." But something deep inside, something quiet, whispered, "What if he won't?" Slowly, carefully, she reached out and touched his hand. His grip was warm. He helped her stand. Her legs shook. She almost fell, but he caught her gently. "You're okay now," he said. Zira looked at him with wide eyes. For the first time, someone didn't look at her like garbage. He wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "Let's get you somewhere dry." As they walked away, a guard from across the street narrowed his eyes. "A human? Helping that thing?" he whispered to his friend. The other guard smirked. "Fool, she's nothing." But Eli didn't care. He didn't even look back. Rain still fell, but now it didn't matter. Zira was no longer alone on the cold sidewalk. The rain had slowed, but the wind was sharp as a blade. Zira walked beside the strange human named Eli. Her body leaned heavily against him. She was weak, her legs barely holding her up. Her fingers clutched the coat he had given her like it was a treasure. She didn't understand why he helped her. Humans were rare in this part of Varel 9. Most of them worked for high companies or stayed in protected zones. But Eli didn't look like a rich man. His boots were old. His coat had patches. Yet, he was warm, gentle. They turned into a quiet alley between buildings. The tall city towers faded behind them. Neon lights blinked. In the puddles, Jira's voice finally broke the silence. Why, me? Eli glanced down. Because no one else would. She stared at the ground. That answer confused her, but it also made her chest feel heavy. They passed a food stall where steam rose from metal pots. The smell made Zira's stomach twist. She stopped and looked at the food, her eyes wide and hungry. Eli noticed. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a few small credits. Not much. Maybe enough for a meal. He ordered a bowl of hot broth and a soft bread piece. When it was ready, he handed it to Zira. She blinked. For me? He nodded. Her hands shook as she took the bowl. The heat from it stung her fingers. It felt alive. She hadn't held warm food in so long. She tried to eat slowly, but hunger won. Her first bite brought tears to her eyes. Eli smiled but didn't say a word. After she finished, he led her to a small lift that took them up 3 floors. The building was old, cracked, and smelled of rust, but inside was dry. He unlocked a door. This is my place. Zira hesitated at the doorway. No one had invited her inside a home before, not without wanting something in return. Eli turned on the light. You'll be safe here. Still, she stood frozen. Eli stepped back. I'll stay on the floor. You can take the bed. Zira looked around. It was a small room, a metal bed, a table, a broken screen on the wall, but it was clean and warm. She stepped inside. Slowly. He showed her a blanket and a towel. The water still works, kind of. Zira sat on the edge of the bed. She clutched the blanket like a shield. Eli didn't press her. He moved to the floor and sat with his back against the wall. He pulled out a small toolkit and started working. On something. The soft sound of tools gave her comfort. She looked at him from the bed. You don't want anything? Eli paused, then looked up. No, he said simply. I just couldn't leave you there. She didn't believe it. Not fully, but his eyes didn't lie. Suddenly, a loud knock hit the door. Zira jumped, her breath caught in her throat. Eli stood slowly, putting the toolkit down. Stay back, he said calmly. The knocking came again, harder this time. A low voice growled from outside. You're hiding something, human. We saw her. Eli opened the door only halfway. Outside stood 2 armored aliens. One wore a symbol Zira knew too well. House Drexel's enforcers. She is property, the guard said coldly. Give her to us. She's not property, Eli said. She's a person and she stays here. The guard's hand moved toward his weapon. In a flash, Eli raised a small blaster from his belt. Try it. A long pause. The guards looked at each other. Trash like her isn't worth a war, human. But we'll report this. They turned and left. Eli closed the door and locked it. Zira hadn't moved. Her whole body shook. He turned to her. You're safe, I promise. Zira whispered. You could have given me to them. I don't give people to monsters, he said. And then he did something she didn't expect. He sat beside the door, pulled the coat tighter around him, and said nothing more. Zira watched him in the quiet. A storm had passed, but something warmer had started in her heart. For the first time in her broken life, she believed someone might actually protect her. When Zira opened her eyes, she didn't know where she was, the sound of humming, the faint smell of warm bread, and something else, safety. She blinked slowly. A soft blanket covered her, clean and patched in different colors. The ceiling above her was made of old metal plates, but they didn't leak. There was no rain, no cold wind, no shouting voices, just silence and warmth. She sat up. Pain shot through her side, but not as bad as before. Her arms were bandaged. Her hair was no longer sticky with dirt. Someone had taken care of her. She looked around the room. There were tools hanging on the wall, wires tangled in a box, and a table with a broken toaster half repaired. Steam rose from a small pot near the window, and on the far side, sitting on the floor with his back against the wall, was Eli. He was fast asleep. His head rested against a bag of spare parts. He had given her the bed and taken the hard floor. Jira stared at him. Why? Why did he treat her like a person? She stood slowly and walked to the pot. Inside, something soft bubbled gently. She leaned in. The smell reminded her of something long ago, her mother baking seed bread before she was taken by the soldiers. Her hands trembled. Jira sat down at the table and waited. Minutes later, Eli stirred. His eyes opened halfway. "You're up," he said, rubbing his neck. Jira nodded. "I feel better," she said quietly. Eli smiled. "Good. The med gel helped." "You were in bad shape." She looked at the soup. "You cooked?" He stood and stretched. "Kind of. It's just powder mix and some street herbs." She tasted it anyway. It was the best thing she had eaten in months. "I cleaned your wounds," he said softly. "I hope that was okay." Jira paused. She should have felt scared. But she didn't. "You didn't have to," she said. "I know," he replied. He sat across from her and took out some old bread from a drawer. He offered her a piece. She took it carefully. It was warm, slightly burnt, but soft in the center. As she ate, her eyes studied the room. She noticed drawings on the wall, small sketches of strange machines, a spaceship model, and one drawing of a blue world with green lands. "Is this Earth?" she asked. Eli looked up. "Yeah, my home." "It looks peaceful. It's not perfect," he said. "But no one gets thrown in the street for being ugly." Jira lowered her gaze. He noticed. "I didn't mean—" "It's okay," she whispered. "That's what they called me." Eli frowned. "They were wrong." Jira looked at him. "No one deserves to be treated like that," he said. She wanted to believe him. But years of pain whispered otherwise. Later, she asked, "Why are you here? On Varel 9? He leaned back in his chair. "I fix things. I like machines more than people usually." Jira smiled a little. Her lips had almost forgotten how. "I wasn't always like this," she said. "Once I dreamed of becoming a voice reader. I used to sing." "You sing?" he asked, surprised. "Not anymore," she said quickly. He didn't push her. Instead, he stood and walked to a small shelf. He took out a strange box. "What's that?" she asked. "Old tech," he said. "A recorder. I collect these." He pressed a button. A melody played. Soft, haunting, beautiful. Jira listened with wide eyes. It was a human song, but she could feel its sadness, its hope. She touched the recorder. "Can it record my voice?" Eli looked at her. "Do you want it to?" She didn't answer at first. Then, slowly, she nodded. He handed it to her. Jira took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and began to sing. Her voice was soft, trembling at first, but then it grew stronger, like wind moving through trees, like rain falling on glass. Eli stared in awe. He had never heard anything like it. When she finished, she opened her eyes slowly. "I'm sorry," she said. "Why?" Eli asked. "It's not good. Not anymore." "No," he whispered. "It was perfect," Jira smiled. "A real one this time." In this small apartment that smelled like warm bread and broken wires, something unexpected was born. A bond. Not between a mechanic and a stranger, but between two broken souls who had finally found a reason to hope. It had been 4 days since Jira last saw the street. Inside Eli's small apartment, time moved slowly, but safely. She had washed her hair, cleaned her skin, and even smiled twice. Eli never asked too many questions. He never stared at her scars or made her feel less than who she was. She spent her time quietly, singing sometimes when she thought he couldn't hear. But he always did, and he never interrupted. But peace has a habit of breaking when it's finally settling in. That morning, Eli left early to trade tools in the lower district. Jira stayed behind, sweeping the floor and trying to learn how to use the electric cooker without burning things. She wore one of Eli's spare shirts, big on her but soft. She had just placed bread dough into the oven when, bang, bang, bang. The door shook with a loud knock. Jira froze. Her heart jumped. She stepped back. "Eli," she called softly. No answer. The knock came again, louder, more forceful. Her hands trembled. She moved toward the door quietly and peeked through the small hole in the wall. 2 people stood outside. One was tall, dressed in silver armor with a Drexel crest on the shoulder. The other was her former mistress, Lady Vej Drexel. Jira stumbled back from the door, her breath quickening. She whispered, "No. No. Why is she here?" She looked for a place to hide, but the room was small. Her legs moved on their own. She slid behind the old curtain in the corner just as the door slammed open. Eli had forgotten to bolt it. The enforcer stepped inside first. His boots echoed like thunder. Lady Vej followed, her cold eyes scanning the room. "Filthy place," she said, covering her nose. "Smells like machine oil and failed dreams." Jira pressed her hand over her mouth. "She's here," the enforcer said. "I can smell her kind." "Of course she is." That human picked her off the ground like a lost pet. The enforcer looked toward the curtain. Jira squeezed her eyes shut. But before the enforcer could pull it open, another voice cut through the silence. "Step away from my home." It was Eli. He stood at the entrance, a small crate of supplies in one hand and a shock pistol in the other. The enforcer growled, "She belongs to House Drexel. She was rejected, but her DNA still counts as property." "Your property was bleeding on the sidewalk," Eli snapped. "Now she's not yours, she's herself." Lady Vej sneered. "What will you do, human? File a protest? This isn't your world." "No," Eli said, "but this is my home, and you're not welcome. Here." The enforcer raised his weapon. "You think you can fight House Drexel?" Eli didn't blink. "I don't need to fight them, I only need to protect her." The curtain moved. Jira stepped out slowly. Her voice was shaky, but her words were clear. "I am not your tool anymore." Vej's eyes narrowed. "You speak now?" "I was never broken," Jira said, standing straighter. "You just couldn't see my worth." Lady Vej took a step forward. "Ungrateful creature, you owe us your life." Jira met her eyes. "You threw away my life." The enforcer raised his blaster again. Eli stepped in front of Jira. One more step, and both sides would fire. But Jira moved first. She reached into the crate Eli dropped earlier and held out an old data crystal. "This holds my voice, my music, my proof. The Interstellar Artists Guild accepted my first recording yesterday." Lady Vej blinked. "You think they'll protect you?" Jira smiled faintly. "They already did. I'm not trash anymore. I'm a registered citizen and a creator." The enforcer looked at Lady Vej. "She's legally protected now." A long silence. Vej's lips twisted in disgust. "You will regret this." But she turned and left, her enforcer following behind. The door slammed shut. Jira sank to the floor, breathing fast. Eli rushed to her and held her shoulders. "You okay?" She nodded slowly. "I didn't want to hide," she whispered. "Not anymore." Eli looked at her proudly. "You didn't. You stood tall." And in that moment she realized something. She wasn't a thing to be owned. She was becoming someone. And Eli was the first person who ever helped her believe that. It started with one simple upload, a sound file, just her voice. No music, no effects. Jira had whispered the melody into Eli's old recorder 3 nights ago, her eyes closed, her body trembling. She hadn't meant to let anyone hear it. But Eli had heard. And he had done something she never expected. He shared it with the galaxy. Now everything was changing. 3 days after the confrontation with Lady Vej, Eli returned home with wide eyes and excitement in his voice. "Jira, you need to see this." She sat near the window, legs folded, a bowl of warm soup beside her. "See what?" He turned on the old holo projector. The light flickered to life. A page appeared in the air, marked with the golden seal of the Galactic Arts Collective. At the top, New Talent of the Week, unknown alien voice from Viral 9. Below it, her name, Jira. Jira stood slowly, staring at the words as if they might disappear. "They loved it," Eli said. "They're asking for more. Do you want to send them another recording?" She didn't speak. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Not because she was sad, but because for the first time in her life, someone heard her. That night, she recorded again. A different song. A stronger one. Her voice flowed through the air like light on water, rising and falling, full of old sorrow and quiet hope. Eli sat by the door, watching her, completely still. He had never seen anything so powerful. Her voice didn't just make music. It told a story. A girl thrown away, a girl rising, a girl who now touched the stars with nothing but her breath. By the end of the week, her second song had reached over 100,000 plays. Comments filled the feed. "Who is she? This voice feels like it's hugging my soul." I cried. I don't know why, but I cried. Her pain, it sounds beautiful, but the best message came in a small encrypted mail. "Jira, we invite you to perform at the upcoming lunar showcase on Earth. We will cover travel, accommodation, everything. Your voice deserves to be heard." Jira read the message over and over. "I can't go," she said finally, her voice small. Eli frowned. "Why not?" "I don't belong there. I don't even have proper clothes or training. You're not just anything," Eli said. "You're a star. They see it. I see it. But they'll laugh," she whispered. Eli stood and walked to his drawer. He pulled out a box, something she hadn't seen before. He opened it carefully. Inside was a small silver pendant, shaped like a spiral sun. "My mother gave this to me before I left Earth," he said. "She said it brings light in the darkest places." He held it out to her. "Now it's yours." Jira touched it gently, then looked up at him. "Thank you," she said. He smiled. "You don't need to thank me for seeing what was already there." The next day, she stood on a small platform in the back of the local market. A test performance before her big journey. A few people gathered. Some remembered her as the useless street girl. Others looked confused, but once she opened her mouth and began to sing, silence fell over the crowd. Even the vendors stopped selling. Her voice wrapped around them, soft and strong, like the wind that follows a storm. And when it ended, no, one moved, then a slow clap, and another, then many. People didn't just clap, they stood. Some even cried. Jira looked at Eli, her voice shaking. "They didn't laugh. They won't ever again," he said. That night she packed her few things. Eli helped her choose an outfit, a mix of her culture's traditional robes and a sleek earth-made coat. Together they walked to the transport dock. Before she left, she turned to him. "I don't know what will happen, but I know who gave me the chance to become more." Eli nodded. "Go show them who you are." And as she stepped onto the shuttle, pendant glowing on her neck, Jira smiled, not because she had made it, but because she was finally becoming the voice the stars had waited to hear. Fame, Jira learned, was a double-edged blade. Her first performance on Earth shook the halls of the lunar showcase. The crowd had stood in silence, listening like the stars themselves were speaking. People cried, critics cheered. Her name flew, across systems in glowing headlines. "The voice from the streets of Viral 9 shakes Earth's heart. Once called useless, now called divine." She was given offers, interviews, contracts, fancy clothes, but not all eyes were kind. One quiet evening, back on Varel 9, Eli was fixing a broken circuit board at the corner of his apartment when he heard a soft knock. It wasn't Zira. She was still on Earth for her second show. He wiped his hands and opened the door. A tall man stood outside. Not an alien, not a local, human, but too polished, too perfect. Behind him were two figures, guards in golden armor. Eli's heart slowed. "I'm here for Zira," the man said, his smile sharp. "My name is Kadrin Voss. I represent the Echelon Group." Eli stepped outside, closing the door. Behind him. "She's not here." "Oh, I know," Voss said casually, looking around. "But this is where it started, the little home of the mechanic who found her. What do you want?" The man pulled out a digital contract and let it float in the air. "We're offering her 50 million credits for a 5-year exclusive deal. Her image, her voice, her presence. Controlled, shaped, and presented perfectly." Eli's eyes narrowed. "Sounds like a cage with golden bars." Voss chuckled. "You think she belongs in this scrap heap? She belongs where she's free." The man's voice grew cold. "We made her famous. The galaxy listens now. We can also turn the volume down." Eli didn't flinch. "She'll say no." "She hasn't yet." The guard stepped forward, scanning the apartment walls. "She'll say no," Eli repeated. "And if you try anything else, remember she's not alone anymore." Voss smiled thinly. "We'll see." They left, but Eli knew that wasn't the end. Zira returned the next day. The first thing she did was hug Eli at the door, so tightly that he had to drop his tools. "I missed this place," she whispered. "I missed you." He smiled. "You're famous now. I still like your soup better than anything I ate on Earth," she replied. But when he told her about Voss and the offer, her smile faded. "They want to own me again," she said, her voice low. "Yes," Eli said, "but this time you have a choice." Zira sat down at the table. Her eyes stared into space. "You know," she said softly, "when I was on stage, I saw thousands of faces, but I didn't feel real until I came back here." Eli nodded. "Then don't let them make you a puppet." "They say I'm beautiful now," she said, "but it's fake. If my skin was scarred again, they'd throw me out all over again." "You're beautiful because of your soul," Eli said, "not your face, not your fame." Zira looked at him for a long time. Then, quietly, she reached across the table and took his hand. "I'm going to say no," she said, "even if it means losing the spotlight." Eli squeezed her fingers gently. "You'll never lose you. That's what matters." But Voss wasn't finished. The next morning, Zira woke up to see her name trending again. But this time the headlines were different. Zira refuses contract. Ungrateful. Rising star turns down galaxy's biggest deal. Is she breaking? Down. Unstable. Sources say Zira is emotionally fragile. They tried to bury her under lies. Even death threats started to arrive. But Zira didn't hide. Instead, she did something no one expected. She recorded a live message. Wearing Eli's old patched-up coat, she stood in front of a plain wall and spoke into the camera. "My name is Zira. I was born unwanted. I was called ugly, thrown away, and stepped on, but one human gave me a coat, a bed, and a voice. I am not a product, I am not for sale." And then she sang. No music, just her voice. One song, real, raw, and unstoppable. The video exploded across systems. People turned against the companies. Artists rose in support. Even children started singing her song in schools across distant planets. Zira hadn't just touched the stars. Now, she was becoming one. The crowd stood in total silence as Zira walked onto the stage. This wasn't Earth nor Varel 9. This was the Galactic Unity Hall, the heart of interstellar culture. Billions were watching the live stream across thousands of worlds. It was the first time in history that a former servant, once discarded on the streets, was chosen to close the grand music gathering. Her name now stood beside the legends. But Zira didn't wear jewels. She wore a simple robe stitched by her own hands, and around her neck Eli's silver spiral pendant glowed softly. She held no mic. She needed none. Back on Varel 9, Eli sat in his small room, watching the screen. The toaster he had been fixing blinked unfinished on the counter, forgotten. He didn't care about awards. He just wanted to see her shine. As the lights dimmed in the Unity Hall, Zira stepped forward. Her voice, when it came, was soft, gentler than a whisper, but strong enough to stop hearts. She sang of pain, of rain hitting cold stone, of nights without warmth. She sang of laughter that hurt, and names that cut. She sang of a coat, offered by a stranger with kind eyes. She sang of a home not big but full of peace. And then, she sang of love, not romantic, not dramatic, but real. The kind of love that pulls a soul back from the edge, that says, you matter, even when no one else thinks so. When her final note faded into silence, the audience didn't cheer right away. They stood, hands over hearts, eyes wide, tears flowing. And then, the sound came. Not claps, but a wave of silence, a sign of the highest respect in galactic tradition. Zira bowed her head, not because she wanted fame, but because she had spoken her truth. Later that night, the awards didn't matter to her. The interviews could wait. The money, the offers, the endless requests, they were not her focus. Because when she stepped off the shuttle back on Varel 9, someone was already waiting at the landing pad, Eli. He wore the same coat, a little older, a little more tired, but his smile hadn't changed. She ran to him. Without a word, she wrapped her arms around him, and this time she didn't cry because she was broken. She cried because she was whole. I watched, he said, pulling back to look at her. You were everything. You were the first one to believe in me, she whispered. Before they heard my voice, you saw me. They walked home together, under the pale moons of Varel 9. The streets that once spit on her now displayed glowing banners of her name. Children waved, vendors bowed, and yet, she still clutched Eli's hand like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. That night, they sat in the small kitchen again. Bread baking. Old tools on the shelf. Same cracked wall, but everything felt different. I don't care if I sing again, she said softly. Not if it means losing this. Eli smiled, passing her a bowl of soup. You'll keep singing, he said, because now you sing for you, not them. Zira nodded. And for you, he laughed. Even better. She looked at him. Serious. Now, you know they once called me ugly, useless. I remember, he said. Do you still think they were wrong? He reached over the table and touched her hand. No, he said. Zira's smile faded. Oh. They weren't just wrong, he continued. They were blind. He leaned closer, voice gentle. You're not ugly. You're the most beautiful soul I've ever met. You're not useless. You saved me too. Zira blinked. I saved you. Eli nodded. I was alone before you, just fixing machines, living one day at a time. But when you came, everything had meaning. Zira looked down, then up again. Her voice shook as she whispered, then maybe we saved each other. Eli smiled, and for the first time in both their lives they felt not just accepted, not just seen, but truly, deeply loved.